All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salatu salam Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody, and welcome to the Addictions Recovery webinar. I'm here with my lovely, lovely colleagues, sisters, Rawsome sisters. We have Daniela today, we have Anam, and we have Aisha with us. Today, we'll be talking about the impact of trauma on addiction healing, the pain beneath. Very, very deep topic, but inshallah, we'll do the best of our ability in these few minutes that we're together to unpack and give you some insight to this topic. And I'll kick it off by saying what I have seen and experienced when it comes to trauma and addictions being connected. I know that we are in a world where the word trauma is very big. It's very everywhere. There's like, I knew it was huge when I saw that there was trauma yoga. I was like, wow, there's yoga for trauma. That's crazy. Okay, but what does trauma really mean? And to me personally, it has a personal meaning. Trauma is what you make it out to be. And there is the definition if you look it up. But essentially, for me, it is what it is, because it's an experience that you went through, and how it is that you see that experience, or how it is that you choose to approach that experience, is what really makes it trauma. So what I've seen is when people see themselves in a traumatic state and they are not ready to feel the discomfort that may come with it, a lot of times they run to numbing that feeling or running away from that feeling. And that's when really any type of addictions can come in. We can talk about the addictions of buying stuff. We can talk about the addictions of just trying to sleep it off. We could talk about the addictions of food. We could talk about the addictions of, alcohol and drugs and sex and so on and so forth. Anything that will make them not have to feel that uncomfortable feeling, that uncomfortable pain, quote unquote, is gonna help in their minds, right? Is helping them. When it's really not, it's just really putting a very temporary band-aid into something that needs to be processed in a healthy way in order to get out of that experience. Anyone want to add on that? But that's kind of the first thing that came into mind when I think of trauma and addictions.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for that. And yeah, I think the same. The other thing I think is that it's the way that our body and our brain is responding to the stress. We're playing it over and over again. And that creates the hypervigilance of, hypervigilance or anxiety and things like that, when things are just constantly repeating in our minds or it's constantly in our thoughts, basically. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I get,
Oh, go
yeah,
on.
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you go, Aisha. Go.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's so amazing, like how we all seem to be on the same page, because that was what was exactly on my mind as we're coming in, like talking about trauma. I know it has become the big topic now, and like there's a lot of focus on trauma, but there is that common belief that you're traumatized because of what happened to you. And then because there's that kind of stuckness in that, like, I'm hurt, I'm broken. So is there's that kind of filter in which people look at things, or we as human beings would look at things. And it's an innocent belief. It's similar to, when people thought the earth was flat, every decision about travel is going to be like influenced by that. And so when there's a common belief that, I was abused as a child, and then what the psychology says is that if someone is abused, this is what happens to a boy, this is what happens to a girl, she's going to turn to a people pleaser, try to get love, and and so on. So there's a kind of stuckness in that belief, and it keeps people stuck in the belief that the trauma is making them make these common decisions. But I said something there, is that it's because we believe it. And the power of thought, the power of belief is so strong and acknowledged, as in the Hadith Qudsi, even not just our belief about trauma, but even our belief about Allah. Allah is as you think of him. So if trauma is as we think of it as well, and so when we believe we're broken, we're going to try to find medication. And of course, there is that tendency to go to what we like or what we're drawn to, and then overdo it, because it's usually like overdoing things. There are some things that are necessary to human beings, like food is necessary, but then we go and overdo food. We have, for example, pornography and sex addiction. That's a really difficult one as well, because it's a basic need, it's a natural need. But then, first of all, when it's done outside of marriage, like as Muslims, we know that it is it's halal. In fact, like it's a gift from Allah. But then when it's taken out, when it's done like outside of marriage, it has its own problem. But even within marriage, if it is taken as psychological comfort meant to soothe that trauma, then we get caught up in it. But when we see, anyway, like let me not get ahead of myself. Like, yeah, so we're talking about the trauma, like right now, how it is seen, the belief.
Yeah, well, go on, Anam.
Yeah, the way I see trauma, it's like how you're taking in. Something happened, and how you're taking it in, how you're seeing it, that really matters. If we have a connection with our own fitra, with our own teachings, Islamic teachings, not from the perspective, from the hearing perspective. No, it's all about from the heart, how you took in that Islamic teachings, how well you're aware of Allah and the way the things are processing, subhanallah. Once we are clear on that, once a belief system are clear on that trauma, I don't see it as a big thing. It's not that big. Yes, it comes in and it will go, but it all depends on us. Rather, we are numbing it in that particular moment, and how much time we are keeping that in ourselves. The more we are numbing that experience, the more we are keeping that thinking or thinking around that particular experience, the more it would create harm, not just physically, emotionally, and spiritually as well. For me, it is really, really important whenever something hard happened or something big happened, it's really necessary to talk out with somebody, not with everyone, but yeah, with the professionals and with the right person. Once you put that all out and once you would tackle it in a subtle way, inshallah, it's not gonna be a traumatic experience for that long, inshallah, the way I see it.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for sharing, everyone.
Why, Yaki?
Pamela, were you talking?
I was.
I saw the lips move, but I couldn't hear anything.
It is, it's what you've all said before, but we were, looking at trauma, particularly with what keeps it alive is our thinking in the moment, our thoughts in how, how reliving it, over and over and over. So it's not actually a fixed identity, it's just our thinking in the moment.
That's
So,
right.
yeah. And
And
that, what we're pointing here and what we're pointing in every time we're delivering our addiction recovery sessions is, we're pointing us back to our innate health, which is always there. It's just, momentarily lost because we've decided to entertain the thinking. Now, look, that seems very simple. We get it. Seems very, very simple. It oversimplifies it. And if you're not sort of familiar with this particular modality that we do use, it's not even really modality, but, let's just call it that for the lack of better explanation, then it is, you're going to just go, yeah, this is just woo-woo and wacky-doo and doesn't make sense to me, right? But we're still recognizing what happened to you. It was very real, right? But
in that moment.
in what happened to you whenever it happened, whenever it initiated, was very real, yes? And it was unfortunate, and it should not have happened, etc., etc. We're not denying that at all. But what we're saying is that it doesn't have to become a part of you. You're not having to constantly live that or identify with that. You're a person that has lived through a traumatic experience. You're not a person who is now traumatized. There is hope.
I actually just heard this morning, one of the 3P practitioners say, it was not in relation to trauma, but I think it's relatable at the same time. The moment we say, I've got XYZ, is when we are already reliving that,
That's it.
experience.
The brain doesn't know the difference.
That's right. And so in this, like what I was listening to was in the medical terms, like for, like a dis-ease in the body, and essentially that's what, a trauma is as well. It's a dis-ease in the body because we are thinking about it again, bringing it back into the now when it's not really happening now. And of course, like Pamela said, it's something that did happen and it shouldn't have happened. However, we don't need to keep on that. In any case, like with this, what he was saying is like, once we reframe the way we talk about, whatever it is the moment we can let it go from our, it doesn't come up in different areas in the dis-eases in our body. Quite, I think that's a very important part of this as well.
In reality, what I could see is if something would happen with the person, once they keep that in, it would come to them and not like they're running away from their discomfort. That thoughts would come in, they would revisit that event, and they would attach few labels with that thing. And once they label that particular thing, it's getting bigger and bigger. And once the picture is getting bigger and bigger, the impacts are getting bigger as well, not just for their own selves, but for their loved ones as well. And with whom they're gonna meet, it's gonna impact on them as well. So it is really, really necessary not to like to just talk the things out rather than keeping that in, and rather than revisiting that experiences again and again. The way other mentors have said, like, it was just an experience in that particular moment, and that moment have already gone. You don't have to keep that with yourself, and others don't have to see it from that lens as well. Once you are very much clear on yourself, it's really easier for others as well to see in you another you as well, rather than seeing you from that particular experience. Like if I am talking about um some experience related to the rape, right? So it doesn't have to keep that with you for the years of your life. No, it was just an experience in that moment. Yes, it was not good. It doesn't have to be. But the thing is, like, um, just process that thing with the professionals in a right space and time. And yes, it will go, inshallah. With the passage of time, things would settle in and it will be easier for you and for your loved ones as well to just keep things going in a quite smoother way rather than keeping that in a heavier way. It's going to be easier to just taking it as the experience has already gone rather than keeping that all in. Yeah.
And like keep bringing it back on topic with, you know, addictions and stuff like that. Quite not all the time, but in many cases, you know, people turn to, you know, different vices in order to cope, quote unquote, with the impact of what they experience. And it's really used as a like a numbing of the pain or whatever it is, or, you know, feeling of some sort of in control, like that feeling that they're in control. But, you know, the thing is that the addiction isn't the problem, it's the symptom of the deeper wounds. Now, as I think Anam mentioned, you know, sometimes that is about not talking to anyone and everyone, but someone who can point you back to your well-being, as Pamela said as well, like that well-being that's innate in each and every one of us, you know, even those of us who have been through traumatic experiences in the past, that well-being is still within us, you know, it hasn't ever gone away.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we need to uncover. It's not discovering or anything like that. It's uncovering from all those heaviness or the heavy thoughts that are keeping us in that lower level of consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, you know, like with the innate well-being, like you spoke about, and I think we've all spoken about the role of identity. And, you know, one of the biggest, in fact, I think one of the most important things, or the most important things, is truly knowing our identity. Now, I think we did do something here, like in Back to the Fitra, about identity. It was so profound because we might say, when we're introducing ourselves, we have the name, we have the profession. I'm a mother, but when we get down to it, when we go back to the soul level, as souls, we were created to worship Allah. We started out as souls before we had the body and the levels, positive or negative. And so when we're at that level and we remember our true identity and what we're here to do, and what our Creator has told us about ourselves, even starting from our father Adam, we were guided, like we know Allah, we are guided. Allah wants us, but yet as part of our human nature, we forget. And it is okay. It's okay because Allah Himself told us about that. And when we forget our identity, that is in the moment, that is when we're likely to do things that are not beneficial for us or for anything or honoring our Creator. And that remembering, that is the fitra, like that's the innate well-being. That's the innate well-being. It's so easy to think that because I've done this, I'm no longer worthy. I'm no longer worthy. And so all that heaviness can actually keep us in the loop.
Yeah.
It's what keeps us in the loop. So if there are any tools, since I would say tools is the innate tools with Allah, which Allah has imbued us with, which is the remembrance of Allah. And when we remember, then everything. And so it looks, when we think about the thought chain, okay, so we could, we used to understand things as a circle, or something happens and it makes me feel this way and I behave this way. And when I behave this way, it keeps on going round in a circle. It makes me feel this way. So behavior, and it seems that that's all it's ever going to be. But that's not the way it works. It is, what we have is a chain. It's a thought in the present or absence of anything that is thought. It's innate, like we have thoughts. And that thought, whether we're aware of it or not, it's going to bring feelings. And those feelings seem to influence behavior. But that is where free will comes in. Allah has consistently talked to us about feelings, but we're not worshiping our feelings. We're worshiping Allah. Or we're not, and when I say worship, of course, we're not setting out to worship our feelings, but I feel angry, so I'm going to do this. I feel, I want this and I'm going to get it. But then Allah has given us that capability to be aware of those feelings. But then our knowledge comes in. We know that, and we remember what we're supposed to be doing, or what we're being. And so in that place, increasingly, as we keep observing that space, the tiny space between feelings or thinking and behavior, and that is where we have the free will. And then the more we observe and make that choice, then it becomes even subconscious. And I guess that is where it says that we can either become creatures of habit from free will or on autopilot. So free will, there's this, I don't know, is it hadith? It says, I can't remember if it's hadith, but I think it is. If you make a habit of doing something so much, and then even, the time, you don't do it or you do it subconsciously, you're rewarded for it. But there is the tendency for that thing also to become autopilot. So what is the answer? The great gift that has been given to us is the gift of consciousness, the gift of becoming conscious of our feelings, and remembering. And with the remembrance of Allah, hearts find rest. And in that calm, we're led by our wisdom. Because that's, in fact, that's why when Daniela was speaking, that's what I remembered about wisdom. So our brain does not know reality, but our wisdom does. When we are coming from that place in our heart, our spiritual heart, the free heart, the healthy heart, it knows the reality.
Beautiful.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. And I'm gonna bring it back to what Pamela was saying earlier, because I can see how somebody in the room might be like, what in the world did Aisha just say? Is she speaking alien right now? No, she's not speaking alien. We have a few minutes and we do our best to unpack this topic to the best of our ability. But the truth is, mashallah, Back to the Fitra Academy has tackled on some very big issues per se when it comes to addictions and when it comes to trauma. We're talking about war, we're talking about oppression, we're talking about abuse, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. We're talking about, porn addictions and hard drugs and food addiction. And also, so we've, alhamdulillah, have dealt with a lot of these big targets that people seem to think they cannot progress from. And the best way to really see if your situation or the situation of a loved one is something that we're able to help you with is to simply fill out an interest form and have our wonderful Daniela get back to you. But this is not woo-woo stuff. We just, we're speaking to the spirits right now. Nobody was born addicted. Nobody was born traumatized. Therefore, the solution is not going to be something intellectual. It's going to be something spiritual that comes straight from Allah. We are only mentors, who have been, given a knowledge to help people to reconnect to their innate form. And that's where the answer really is. That's all we're saying. So inshallah, anybody who feels, just lost and is not understanding anything, or the person who has come on and is like, Alhamdulillah, I just heard exactly what it is that I needed, do reach out, do your istikhara, of course, and see how Allah is guiding you, because we're all about how Allah is guiding you. This has nothing to do with us. And, just trust that there is an answer for everything. Allah said that with every disease, with every illness, I have created a cure for it. Everything. Everything. If it is that somebody thinks that this is in that topic. So do know that there is a solution for absolutely everything.
We have a question in the chat from a sister, I think it's Asia. Isn't trauma when the brain is stuck in fright, flight, or freeze due to a traumatic event? Would anyone like to answer that?
So I'll chime in really quick because I'm about to log off because I got to go back in the house. So I'll say initially it can be, right? It can be that. But also you still have, going back to what Aisha says, free will, which is really a choice. You have the choice to come out of it. You have the choice to stay in it as well, too. And when you start seeing that you still have your God-given choice, you know how to move forward. But if it is that you feel that you are in that state and you are that state, we talked about identity. I am an addict. I am broken. If you think you are that thing, whether you're frozen or stuck, then you're going to stay in that state. But you have a choice to come out of it.
So I do like that you referred to is it when the brain is stuck? So yes, our thinking gets stuck.
And
Our
it
thinking
depends
gets
on
stuck.
totally us, how much time we are taking in keeping that event in our minds, and how much time it takes in to the whatever the mode is, rather the freeze, flight, or whatever it is. It depends on us, how much time we are taking in. It's our decision. It's our own. In that moment, yes, it was, it may be, but not too long. After that, you have a choice. We have a gift of the choice. And it's not from anybody else. It is from Allah who created us, who is the owner of every single being. Whatever just happened, we feel in that moments that we are alone, and we were alone in that timings. But in reality, like, it was the way our thinking is in that moment. But if we would see it in a different way, we are not alone. We were not alone as well. Rather, it could be like there was nobody around me in that particular moments, but still it's the way of our own thinking. It's the way of our own it's our own way to see things, to observe things. Subhanallah, there is a whole thing. If we would get into the like it's gonna be a different topic we would get in, but just to keep that in our minds that only humans are not here in this world. So many other creatures are here as well. And if we would get in directly with the Allah, He is always, always there for us. The nature is working all the time, every single time, rather we could see it or not, it's there, it's working. Subhanallah.
I like that you touched on the fact that it isn't the trauma or traumatic event that actually has the impact. It's the fact that you're left alone with that pain. The fact that you didn't know how to process it. Weren't given, a guiding hand or, someone like that, but you can. Yeah.
Exactly. The more you are thinking into that, thinking that yes, we were alone, then the stage would come in as numbing that pain. And how we are numbing that pain, it could be from any drug, from anything. It could be just the screen, it could be an emotional eating, whatever it is, but the way we are taking in, the more time we are numbing that pain, the more we are trying to run away from that pain or from that discomfort. Yes, it would lead to somewhere else, not always in the good place, not in always in the neutral place, but yeah, it could lead to somewhere else that where it's not gonna be a good. Yeah.
Yeah, and fight or flight, it's a fear response, right? And so, like, when we go back again, like with the filter with which we're looking at it, so if the brain believes that is something to fear, it's going to go into fight or flight. But like when using like software terms, what has been installed in us, like is Iman, right? And part of Iman is fear of Allah. So when we have the fear of Allah, we're not going to fear anything. Because even is the knowledge that even when we're stuck, we are human, we're stuck. So is the understanding, anyway, before we get into that, there is this, she's a speech therapist, and like her son has autism, severe autism, and she talked about how many times she would come home and there will be the fire services because her son just goes, like, breaks everything, and if there's anyone, he's going to hurt them. And so one of the things she did with him was that when he was in the moment where he was calm, then she's learning from him, what do you observe that makes you like that make that just, I guess, scares you, or what gives you peace? And so what she worked out with him was that whenever he was in his fight or flight and he's breaking things or like hurting people, that is his fear response. That is his fight, right? So he told her what helped, and so she put up his toys in the room, make up a corner, and so that she doesn't want him to go into fight or flight, and so that will be what she taught him about, observation, like being observing. So he's already known what works for him, and it's not a prescription because she is, like, working with him, what works for you when you're in that space, and he realizes this is the thing. And so whenever he's in that stage, that's what she provides for him. And then when he's calm again, now, like, they go into conversation, and they say, what happened? Like, how did you go off track? So this is not a prescription because it's not going to work for anyone. But going back to that, we can see that what has been installed in us is, like, when we're so used to remembering Allah, like the fear, even in times of fear, when we fear something and we're remembering, no, like, we fear Allah, and the fear of Allah is different from it's not a debilitating fear. So I see that like with that remembrance, like over time, even when our brain freezes, the brain is not in the driver's seat, like it's our wisdom. So, you know, that is going to jump in, and the wisdom takes over, and the wisdom does not rely on our intellect. The wisdom, like our wisdom, recognizes the power of Allah, because many times in addiction, it's described that it's like addiction is like a bully inside of you that knows you very well. So before you're even aware of it, it has started you towards the process of going towards that thing you're addicted to. But you know, it takes a million. Nobody can ever figure out a human being. We can never figure out situations. We're going to be in unique situations. We're unique human beings. So that understanding that there's nothing to fear except Allah, like it's something we get used to, and so it will step in, like it steps in whenever, and then overrides the fight or flight.
One
So
thing you
like
just
that was a
remind
bit
also,
intellectual. Yeah.
you just
Yeah, that
reminded
was a
me. Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Now go on. I was just saying that was a bit intellectual. I'm going into, yeah.
No, you just talked about you know, the only thing we need to be afraid of is Allah, right? And Sydney Banks has a really beautiful quote, which I absolutely love, because the more I hear it, the more I hear it. Like I hear it even in a deeper level, you know, and that is, I'm going to hyper paraphrase now, but if the only thing we didn't fear was our, oh, hang on, now I've lost it. We don't need, basically it is, we don't need to fear our experiences, because that's going to keep us in that stuck thinking, which is
Yeah.
basically what it is, really. We're at a level of stuckness. We haven't been able to see things from a different way. When we get out of that, though, like it's a whole range of doors that we can open and have a good feeling in. You know, if we allow ourselves to not be afraid of moving past that, to not falling victim to our experiences or to the label that we've given us or somebody else has put on us too, you know, because that quite happens. And then we start believing that certain label of, you know, X, Y, Z. But that's not where the healing lies, you know, for anybody. And so I think, you know, just going back to that, not fearing our experiences. It's happened for a reason. There's a love letter there. What is that? What is that teaching me? And if we can find the blessings in the experiences, you know, that's enough to, you know, for us to be able to pivot in the way that we're thinking about our lives and our circumstances and move forward, inshallah, and not be stuck.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, I know that reminded me of an actual case. Someone, he's a 3P practitioner, he shares about, it's not directly related to addiction, but we're talking about trauma, and you know, in addiction is how the trauma leads us to numbing with the drug of choice. This is like his own trauma. He's a soldier. He was in the army and he was in active conflict. And his PTSD is that he sees dead people. He sees dead people, and initially it wasn't so much like a problem until the dead people he sees start telling him to kill. So you know that is really dangerous. It gets really dangerous. So after he went through the coaching, so and he got, you know, he had a shift in this understanding. Now he understands now that is made up. It is not real. So you know, you see a dead person, of course you're going to be afraid, and that's going to be PTSD is the worst. I will say, I don't know if it is, or I'll call it like the worst case of fight or flight, because it is sort of as I will say, what does that say with special effects, thoughts with special effects. Yeah, thoughts with special effects, because it's his thought, but it is so real to him that he can do anything. And so, but when he had the shift in the understanding, now he can see on one of the days, he goes into his car and it looks like there is somebody by his side seated, one of the dead people. He said he had gotten up, gotten to the back seat, and he just realized, oh, this is made up. I don't need to do anything different. And then he goes back to his seat. So one of the insights he had is that this usually happens when he's really stressed. It happens, so it is like a sort of mechanism to remind him that he's out of balance. So, and that's the same thing with any trauma. When the thought in the moment, like it comes up in the moment and it seems we're back in that thing, or it seems, you know, somehow we've made up like this is what is going to happen, or this is what is going to help me. And so it comes from like with the shift in understanding, we can go from believing that trauma and going for the what we think will solve it, like whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or going to like using something to numb, to freeze. It goes to the understanding that this is something I'm making up. This is something my brain is making up. And when we're in that state, then we fall back into the remembrance, because every moment in our life, like we're in service to Allah. We're in service to Allah, and every moment when we're in flow, when we're in our wisdom, we know exactly what to do. And nobody can tell us how to do it, but tuning into our connection with Allah.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm just going to read from the chat. Sister Rakaya said, Assalamualaikum sisters, it really depends to how long the addiction has been around and getting the right time and right place. The sooner the better. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Yes and no. I say obviously yes if we can nip it in the bud, but you know, just knowing that everyone's on their own journey, and so you know, if we think it has to be in a certain time frame, then we're putting an expectation on the person or ourselves, and that could actually hinder the healing process. It could put more pressure on them, and what happens is a relapse. And with the relapse as well, which we've spoken about this in other webinars, is that that's part of the process as well. So yeah, it can be, but it doesn't always work out like that, and that's okay. Like just knowing that a person is on their journey, and once they see or have an insight about a different way, or how their thoughts are working, or it can change things. So it may take a long time, it may take a short time. It depends on the individual. And no, there's no right or wrong. And the other thing that Sister Asia has written, I've been through trauma and felt powerless and I'm able to make progress in my life. One thing that Back to the Future taught me through the power of thought was taking my will and my power back. The 3 principles woke me up to the realization that most of what I was experiencing was just through thought and not my reality. Alhamdulillah, by the will of Allah, I can't quickly pull myself out of a mental health crisis, but of course, having at least one person to remind you of your state is so important, and that's so true. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah. I'm so glad that we've been able to help you, Sister Asia. And yeah, it can be small steps of change. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it can be small state of change, and sometimes people have had a big leap, with just, as we said again, that shift in understanding. There's been a big leap, because the moment some people go, I've known people who have been in drug for 30 years, gotten out of it, and there's some like who've had that shift. When we started with this addiction department, I knew someone shared about how he had been in that addiction, active addiction, but I think it was in 3 weeks where he had the shift, and it was so amazing to see. So there's nothing, time frames. Yes, like we might have time frames, but Allah's will supersedes our time frames.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah. How can I get to read or do away with my, is that phone addictions?
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
It looks like it.
Mm.
I think the first thing is just the awareness of what it is that you're addicted to or what your state of mind is. Because the first part is, you know, how we are. Like there'll be an agitated feeling inside of us. So if we find that ourselves you know, how our state of well-being is it neutral or is there a thought there? And we find that thought is triggering us to be agitated or something like that. That could be your, you know, there's levels. And so I'll tell you an experience, not about phone. Okay, I'll tell you an experience. It's not about phone, but I realized this in myself. So mine was coffee, and I like coffee. I do like drinking that. But there was at one stage I was drinking more coffee and I knew I was drinking it more and I didn't know why until like after a couple of days, I'm like, this is not normal. Like there's something else going on. As soon as I realized, oh, I'm actually having a stress response about something. And I knew that I had a lot of thinking going on about this particular circumstance that was happening or experience that was happening in my life. And I was stressed out and I was reaching for coffee. And as soon as I realized that, I'm like, oh, actually, I don't even need coffee now. It was just as simple as that. You know, just the awareness of where my thoughts were coming from and what I was doing. So yeah, you know, you're an entrepreneur and keep checking to see if you've got a new order, knowing that your rizq will come is from and only from Allah. So that's a whole nother I think another a ball game, but you have no control over that. You know, Allah is in control of all of our affairs, in fact. You know, so we can continue to look at our phones or whatever, but it doesn't mean that anything will happen. Everything will happen by the will of Allah. And that's just a quick response to your question.
Yeah, and like as you were speaking, Danielle, like what came up for me was, you know, there's mindless scrolling, and then there's using the phone mindfully. So it depends on which, because when we're using it mindfully, it's we're using it for our business, and we know that everything is in
That's
balance, right?
Yeah.
Your eyes have a right over you, your body has a right over you, like your family has a right over you. So there are times you work, and so I would say that, you know, by the definition of addiction is when you're doing something that, you know, is harmful to yourself, like and to others, you're using it for some sort of psychological comfort, like to derive comfort from it, like that's the numbing thing. And like that's addiction. But you have a set time where you're doing your, you know, like you're attending to your business. And like for me, an example I'll give of the one that is mindless is sometimes there was a time I believed that I needed to have my phone like playing games in order to concentrate, like when I'm watching a webinar, like when I'm attending a class or something. And so all the time I will have my games I'm playing and I'm listening. But then coming to this understanding, I realized I might have been processing like intellectually, but we're more than our brains. We're mind, body, and soul, and it's all one. There's some understanding that doesn't take place in the brain, but um, it is. So anyway, like with the understanding, I know I could have gone and see what works for other people, but to come into like what it occurred to me one day, because when I was just making dua, Allah show me, you know, like shift whatever the shift needs to be shifted in me. And then what I suddenly what came to me, and I know it's a no-brainer, like I just decided, oh, if I am like listening to something, how about getting a pen and paper writing my insights that come. So, that's one way. People have different ways, but it all comes like from continuously asking ourselves, sometimes, is it pleasing to Allah? And so we get, so again, it goes back to mindful use
Yeah.
and not mindless scrolling.
Mm. There's another question in the chat. How do I embed that Allah is in control of all of that? We have no control about anything, really. It's just the illusion to think that we do. And Allah is the Almighty. He has the all control of everything. And it's, yeah, anything else other than that is the illusion to think that we have. That's the way I see it. We can, of course, we got to still, put our ducks in a line, let's say, we work towards a certain goal that we may have or we may want. And we do that, we put in the effort to get, to whatever it is. But ultimately, we don't know if we're going to get that certain way or that certain goal that we're wanting to achieve. That's in Allah's hands. And when we realize that, not from a intellectual space, but from a heartfelt space, then we just are able to navigate, the ups and downs, because life isn't linear, it's ups and downs. And that, is also with, with our understanding, with life, there's going to be ups and downs. And that's just how life is.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and that reminds me again, so, there's so much out there, there's so much to do, but we come back to the remembrance that we're human beings, we're human doings, because sometimes when we go all out, in panic, trying to say, what do I do? What do I do? We're getting ourselves deeper. So here, like what we have, and back to the fitra, is getting the spiritual understanding, like understanding the power of thought. Because when I think Harry Davidsky, he worked with indigenous Canadians, like the indigenous people, and they were so caught up, like theirs is an alcohol addiction. It's like really serious alcohol addiction. So one of the things he observed was that when they would go into their sweat lodge, because at that time you're really giving up everything, the power is not with me, it's with us, something higher than me. So letting go of all the thinking, at that time everything drops. There is like freedom from that addiction, and they come back to life. But as you get into the grind of daily life, then again we think our way back into addiction. So when we understand like the power of thought as well, so we get the understanding the power of thought, how we come to all these illusions. And then on the other hand, like whether, so that one is a known thing, like whether we are in the understanding or not, all power belongs to Allah. So it's just a fact. And so our thought, our overthinking sometimes can take us away from that like understanding. But when we understand, when we get when we understand the power of thought, so we have the two things. We have the spiritual understanding, and then we have the intellectual understanding. And that is not to say that despite our understanding, we're always going to be human beings. There are times where we forget, but it's on a different level. Because even now, like, when we forget, there's that understanding. So when we're caught up in anything, it is a kind of peaceful. So when we're in anger or stress, like it's a kind of a peaceful one, and there's the understanding. This is not coming from anything outside of me. It's coming from my thinking. Anything good is coming from remembrance of Allah. Anything that gets me into trouble, it's my thinking. And so that helps us to snap back much quicker, like when we get into it.
Mm. I just wanted to, you said something which reminded me, you know, this isn't about doing things or doing more. It's about the subtractive psychology. So it's taking things off of our mind, because a lot of, you know, there's a lot of doing things out there in the world, but this isn't about that. It's about coming back to that remembrance, coming back to our fitra, coming back to our well-being, our innate well-being that's always in us. And how do we do that? By seeing that the rest is thought.
Yeah.
Mm,
I see Hadiza here. It reminds me of the power of the pause.
yeah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm going to just pop in the chat again the form if you or anybody else you know would like help from us with our addiction team. Fill in the form and one of us will get back to you as soon as possible, inshallah. Yeah. Any last final words, Aisha?
There's nothing to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. And what that actually means, I know it is, it can seem like women, when you're caught up so much in it, at that time, there's nothing to do on an intellectual level, because when you take the pause, we usually call it like, about the red light, like the traffic light system. So it's
Yeah.
being aware. If we're caught up in, turbulent emotions, that is the time to take a pause before we do anything.
Yeah.
And if we have to do it at that moment, is just asking a reflective questions. Is this pleasing to Allah?
Yeah.
Is this pleasing to Allah? And
Mm.
of course, when we're in the green, we know that that is a sign we're in our wisdom.
Yeah.
And in that time, yes, so it's just the observing and the taking the pause.
Yeah. The recording will be in the school app, inshallah, or the school classroom. So I will put that link for school in the chat too. Give me 1 second.
And if you're from Nigeria and you want to access school,
Oh yeah, of
you
course.
have to have a VPN.
Oops. Need to go here. There we go. So they'll be uploaded, I think, within 48 hours, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Awesome. Jazakallah khair, everyone, for being here, for those who wrote in the chat and whatnot. Jazakallah khair. And Jazakallah khair as well to our lovely mentors, Aisha, who else was here? Ayay,
Oh.
Anam, and Pamela. I think I've got everyone who were here. Alhamdulillah. Awesome. Jazakallah khair. Anything that we've said that is good is from Allah, and anything that we said that is bad is from us. May Allah forgive us. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you next month, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Okay, Pamela, could you